more we can remember that today is an adventure and life will give me the exact set of experiences I need to see more clearly what is still bound up inside of me, what I still don't like, what I still want to get away from. And the more we just have moments throughout the day where we turn towards and say, I see you, to the fist in our solar plexus or the lump in our throat or the crick in our neck, that is where alchemy happens. Of course.
Welcome to another episode of Your Soul Purpose. I'm Dr. John Filo, and today on the program we have author, counselor, and awakening mentor Mary O'Malley joining us from the West Coast in Kirkland, Washington. Mary's story in the early 70s, a powerful awakening, led her to begin changing her relationship with her challenges, freeing her from a lifelong struggle with self-judgment, shame, and despair. Mary's latest book, What's in the Way is the Way, provides a revolutionary approach for healing your fears, your anxieties, shame, and confusion, so you can live from a place of ease and well-being. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I mean, it was free-flowing, and I have to say, one of the best interviews I've had to date. She was a delight to speak with. And we talked about a number of things. We talked about overcoming fear by recognizing, first and foremost, our stories, the meaning we give to our experiences, and how much we're addicted to our own story, and that distinction between the story about our life and our actual life. And she says that, when we become aware of this internal storyteller in our mind, just being aware of it, just sitting with it, just observing it and seeing it at work and not getting lost in it, and using our focused human attention and recognizing, as Mary says, our spells in life, the spell that I am separate from life, or the spell that life is not safe and therefore I can't trust and I am doing it wrong, and on the storyteller goes. The only thing, she says, stronger than the spell is that ability to be curious about them, which opens you into a space to ask questions, to dig a little bit deeper. And it's in that place where realization and transformation truly happens. It was a great conversation with a beautiful, beautiful spirit. Here is Mary O'Malley on Your Soul Purpose. Welcome to the show, Mary. I'm so glad to have you on.
Oh, I'm glad to be here too, John.
Great. So your book, and thank you for sending me a copy of the book. I enjoyed reading it, and I actually love the title. It was the best part of it, I think. What's in the way is the way, and it's almost reads like a mantra. And,
right.
I kind of just wake up looking at it and just saying it a few times, and it's got so much depth to it. What is the way? How would you define that for our listeners?
Well, life is a great river of creativity, and it's been happening for 13.8 billion years. And this moment where you and I are talking and your listeners are hearing is the moment that life appears out of mystery. And this is the only moment that matters in our whole lives. But most of us are not here. We're in what I call the storyteller, in our head. And life is inviting more and more of us to come back to this creative flow, to actually engage with the flow rather than thinking about the flow. And because we have been so caught in our minds that life gives us these challenges to help us get to know more this storyteller in our head
Mm-hmm.
that struggles with life all the time. And so, as we begin to trust that life gives us the exact set of experiences that we need in order to come back to life, life becomes an adventure.
Mm. It's not a destination, is it?
No,
It's
mm-mm.
it's the journey.
It's the journey. The really important thing to understand is that there's nothing to fix,
Mm.
there's nowhere to get to. We are already fully here
Mm.
in this flow of life. We just don't think we are.
Yeah.
So, in this work, it isn't about trying to get any place,
Mm.
it's about discovering how to see and see with great heart this storyteller in our head that struggles with most everything. I mean, from the length of the stoplight to our death.
Mm. And to a certain degree, what is in the way, our struggles, our challenges in
Right.
life, um, there's a certain paradox to that, isn't there? I mean, when as a young child, you touch a hot stove, you learn to not touch it again.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
we have this behavioral innate tendency to be aversive to pain,
Right.
to not
Yes.
look at pain, and to
Yeah.
not. So there's this really beautiful poetic paradox to all this, because in one way, the human being, the mind, is trained to be aversive from pain,
Exactly.
yet
Yeah.
our true awakening, our awakening to our divinity, happens through pain, happens
Yeah.
as we go through it. I mean, there's a certain paradox there, isn't there?
Yeah, right. And I asked Eckhart Tolle, I brought him to Seattle many, many years ago before
Mm.
he was really well known, and he stayed with me. And I asked him, does it take suffering
Mm.
in order to awaken? And he said, no.
Mm.
But then he said that the collective unconsciousness is still so thick at this time, in
Right.
human evolution, that it is going to take suffering for people to be kind of cracked open in a way. We
Mm.
are very addicted to this storyteller in our head that likes this, that doesn't like that, that
Mm.
thinks if it just gets rid of this and gets this, then everything will be okay. And that's the game of endless struggle. And I ask people, has that ever brought you the lasting peace you long for? And of course, everybody says no.
Yeah.
And so we do need to, number one, see that our mind is resistant. It has been trained in resistance. In fact, when we were very young, we had feelings and experiences that we mainly experienced on our own because
Mm-hmm.
our parents had left themselves a long time ago. We didn't know what to do with these feelings and these experiences, so we stuffed them deep inside of us. We ran away to our minds. We became human doings rather than human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And as we begin to come back to life, to see there's a huge difference between your story about life
Yeah.
and the actual living experience of life, we need to work with this mind that says it's like a red alert, doing, doing, going the wrong direction. You're supposed to go away from what you don't like.
Yeah.
And as we learn how to relate to this storyteller in our head
Mm.
rather than from it, we discover that in the greatest challenges of our lives are embedded the greatest gifts.
Yeah. But see, I mean, I guess we realize at some form or another that every experience in our life is we give meaning to it. And as we give meaning to it, we create that story.
Right.
For us to move through that big hurdle of fear, that we look at it
Yes.
as a mountain of fear, but when we look at it closely,
Right.
it's these little pebbles of meaning. We've
Yeah.
given this
Yeah.
experience a certain meaning in our life. We've given that experience a certain. So how does one become attuned to that?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important, and I do this in What's in the Way. At the end of each of the 10 chapters, there's what's called the remembering session.
Yes.
And it's a thing that we start out very slowly
Yeah.
and then begin to build up to this spaciousness that we really are. And I think the first step is just to understand that you think about life most all the time. You're rarely here for life. And if life shows up in a way that it just kind of blasts you out of your thinking and you're just fully there with it, then right after that, the mind will grasp hold of it again and say, how can I have more of that? So it's so important to first begin to realize that you lay a story over the top of life. I love the wonderful quote from Alan Watts, the Zen philosopher.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you say the word water, it will never be wet. So
Yes.
that first step is realizing, oh, there's life. And then there's that my story about life. And you start giving yourself these gifts of these moments where you don't lay any story over it. And you begin to see how amazing this is. I mean, science has shown now that, I'm looking out this beautiful window into this magical garden. All of that is made out of light. That's what science knows. And so when we come back, it's like saints had these halos, a lot of them, when they painted pictures of them, they didn't have a metal contraption, sticking out of their head. Their energy actually opened back up again, and people experienced them as radiant. So we begin to hear this possibility. There's our story about life, and then there's life. And we begin to have moments where we see, oh my God, this is wonderful to be open to life right now, right here, as it is. And then, of course, then the mind contracts and takes back over again. And that's when you begin to become curious. I want to get to know this storyteller in my head that is liking and disliking and thinks this is good and that is bad and this is right and that is wrong. And it really is a little problem factory. We don't need to make it wrong. We don't even need to fix it. It is the act of beginning to learn how to, oh my God, I'm so anxious about that. The meeting, I have to give this big presentation and my boss and I haven't been doing very well. And if I don't do the presentation right, then, I'm going to get fired and then I'm going to be a homeless person. I mean, that's what the storyteller is like. What consciousness work is about is, oh, anxiousness is here. Now you have become that which can see what the storyteller is doing rather than being lost in it. And the way I describe it in the book is imagine a beautiful meadow and everything flows in that meadow. It's such beauty, and life flows and death flows and day into night and sound waves flow and light waves flow and we lived in that meadow when we were young. There was a time there was no thoughts in our head and we were open to life. And then imagine the clouds in the sky. They slowly and surely, this is the storyteller being created. I'm a girl, I'm a boy, I'm good when I do this, I'm bad when I do this. And slowly and surely, the clouds surround us. The key of this metaphor is you've never left the meadow.
Yeah.
You just think you have. And we don't need to try to get back to the meadow because we're already always here. Our job is to begin to learn how to use our attention. And we're only beginning to realize the phenomenal power of focused human attention to heal. And as you discover that, you literally begin to dissipate those clouds. Remember, you're not fixing them. You're not trying to analyze them. You're not trying to figure out where they came from or get rid of them. As you discover how to develop what I call curiosity, but it really is the light of focused human attention. Those
Mm,
clouds dissipate,
mm,
and there you are, back, connected, intimate with the great flow of life.
mm. And that's beautiful. And but there's this resistance, even this innate
Hmm.
resistance to that
Hmm.
too, isn't there?
Oh,
I mean, there's
absolutely.
this, well, why should life be that simple? Or
Yeah,
why should, life is about struggle, life is about
yeah,
hardship,
yeah, yeah,
life is about
yeah,
working hard, and all these different definitions that
yeah,
we've been
yeah.
sort of implanted with. And, whether it's from our parents or what have you, but it comes from this place of ingrained, like, no, no, life's got to be hard. You can't just sit there
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
pretend
yeah,
like you're in la la land and you're
yeah.
running down this meadow. And there is this resistance even to that, isn't there?
Absolutely. And part of it is that the last time we were fully connected, we got the living bejesus scared out of us.
Yeah, yeah,
So this when we were very young.
yeah.
And so this mind is constantly trying to do life and do life right. And
Yeah,
I call it in the book spells. And I just love that word because a spell is something that's laid over the top of us.
that's
It's
exactly what it is,
not
a
true,
spell. Yeah.
and it can be lifted. And the first spell of there's 8 core spells that, and if your listeners are interested, they can email Martha, and she can send them the list of the spells. And
Mm,
then my groups, when I was writing the book, we spent a year, you know, exploring how does different minds, say in their head this spell.
hmm.
But the first spell is I am separate from life.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm the cloud bank, that's all around me, and that's the
Yes.
truth. The meadow's not the truth. The second spell is life is not safe.
Mm.
So now we tighten, and now we become human doings rather than human beings.
Well, that first one is a biggie, isn't it? I mean, that,
Really? Yeah.
I'm alone and
Yeah.
I'm not connected to source or divinity.
Right.
And from that just comes this just
Oh,
unworthiness, this lack
yeah.
of trust
Yeah.
and not knowing what, and
Yeah.
to trust your own intuition and your own guidance. So
Yes.
there's that mess and that sort of,
Yeah.
you know, um, density that you need to work through to say, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can learn to trust myself again.
And trust life.
Yeah,
And what's in the way is the way.
yeah.
And the spells, after the first 2 foundational spells, there's 3 operating spells. I've got to do life, and I've got to do it right, and I'm not doing it right enough. This is all what the cloud bank is made out of. It's what the
Mm,
storyteller talks about all day long. And it
yes.
takes us to these 3 hidden spells. Because I'm not doing it right, I am wrong.
Mm,
Because I am wrong, I am unlovable. And because I am unlovable, I am all alone. That is the
mm.
core fear of human beings. And these are just stories in our head. Now it's not quite right to say just stories. These are very
Powerful stories,
seductive,
aren't they? Yes.
but they're not the only thing that really heals them. If you try to fix them, you've got caught in your spell. If you try to understand them, you get caught in the spells. If you judge yourself for having them, you get caught in your spells. That's why I do groups and retreats and phone counseling and everything. So we that are awakening can gather together and discover, oh, these are spells, and the thing that heals them,
Mm,
that is the only thing that I can see that is stronger than the spells, is the ability to be curious about them.
mm,
And that leads you to this spaciousness
mm.
where these spells come home to your heart.
Yeah.
I, I,
And you
I,
can't be curious until you realize that it's a spell.
exactly.
Otherwise, it's the
Yeah.
monster behind
Yeah.
the curtain, so to speak, until you
Yeah.
open up that curtain and you see it's just a spell, it's just a
Right.
story, and that realization will take you to the next step, which is, as you
Yeah.
say, the curiosity.
Yeah, that's why we start with the remembering sessions just a couple of minutes a day. We
Mm.
begin to develop the muscle of our curiosity. The muscle is very weak. So if the mind says, I am sad, you think you're sad. If the mind says you're mad or glad or whatever, we
Mm.
just follow it wherever it goes. But we can't, and we identify it as us. We are not this storyteller in our head. We are that which can see it, that can relate to it. So, a good example out of my life is that I had the kind of childhood what I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went, it was like this slippery, muddy slope. I just kept on falling deeper and deeper into despair. And people tried to help me. And all I heard was there was something wrong with me. And I went to, doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists and group therapy and hypnotherapy and mental hospitals and
Mm.
all that. And then when all of that didn't work, I was eating and doing drugs and alcohol to try
Mm.
to numb all of this out. And when all of that didn't stop the pain, in fact, I once gained 97 pounds in a year, and you can stop the pain for a while, when you eat a dozen donuts,
Yeah,
because you're just so numb. But then the
sure.
pain comes roaring back. And when I was 24, I tried to kill myself 3 times
Mm.
because I wanted to get out of the
Wow.
pain. Then I was taught how to be curious, but it wasn't until I was taught how to be curious with great heart. I mean, all these parts of me had been put out of my heart. The entirety of me had been put out of my heart. And people often ask me, how do I open my heart again? I say, this is not something we can do. You need to understand it's naturally who you are.
Mm.
Begin by developing curiosity,
Mm.
and that will that will bring you more and more spaciousness. Oh, anxiousness is here rather than, oh my God, I'm so anxious.
Yeah.
And the more you open into this spaciousness, the more it's safe for your heart to open again.
Mm.
And now I travel the world. How did I come from that kind of darkness
Mm.
to the life I have now? It is not by fixing, changing, rearranging, getting rid of, rising above, and even trying to understand. It's learning how to have my attention and my immediate experience together. And
Mm.
that's alchemy.
Mm. Wow. What a beautiful awakening that is. I mean,
Yes.
and I mean that touches on what we said earlier with that card is that we dive deep into this negativity.
Yeah.
The soul wants to experience this
Yes.
negativity at some level, and
Yeah.
the awakening is going to happen when it's going to happen. And for you, it
Yes.
was this lifetime, and for others, it may not be. It may not be
Yeah.
for how many lifetimes, but the point is that there is this experience that the soul wants to come through.
Yes. Yes.
And so
Yes.
part of that realization of knowing that it's a story
Right.
also requires us to look back into our past and acknowledge the fact that the 8-year-old that was
Mm-hmm.
traumatized, well, he also created a story. The 12-year
Mm-hmm.
old that
Had to.
was,
Yeah. Had to.
everywhere along
Mm-hmm.
the way we did it, but we did it
Mm-hmm.
the best way we could.
Mm-hmm.
And by looking back at that, we can realize, well, this is how we sort of peel away the layers
Yeah.
of the onion, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would not use the word looking back.
Mm,
That it's all right here.
yes.
And so here
In
we
linear
are.
time, it would be looking back, but it is
Yeah.
all in the present moment. You're
It's
absolutely right.
and that 8-year-old is here in the form of bound up energy. That 12-year-old
Yes.
is here in the form of bound up energy. We come and we look out into nature. Everything flows.
Mm,
And slowly and surely, we learn how to hold on and tighten and hold our breath. And we ran away to our minds that are doing factories. Now, I'm not putting the mind down. It's an exquisite tool. It only took
sure.
the universe 13.8 billion years to figure out how to make it. But it's a tool for maneuvering through reality. It is
Mm,
not reality. And so here we are, and we begin to see that uh, when we're driving to work to do that, presentation that we're absolutely certain that is going to end up in living on the street and being a homeless person, we begin to notice our energy is bound up.
Mm.
And it may be that 8-year-old that had a teacher that shamed him, in front of the class for something that he had done,
Yeah.
something he had written or maybe, but it's right here. It's right here in that fist in the stomach or the elephant
Yes.
on the chest. And it's so wonderful because when the mind tries to do this, it goes back in the mind. But
Mm.
really, truly, that bound up energy is right here. And so we begin to pull our attention out of our mind and we actually bring it right here
Mm.
to that bound up energy. And that's what's in the way is the way. It's a piece of what that book is about.
Yes. Yes. Just seeing it right now in
Right.
your how it's expressing itself
Yeah.
right now in your life, whether it's a back pain, it's a physical, it's a neck pain,
Right.
it's a, it's a relationship challenge. It's
Yeah.
all there in this right now,
Right.
and look at it and just
In the
remove.
energy.
And the
Yeah.
energy, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I love
And
this
energy.
poem that you wrote in chapter 6. I'm going to read it for our listeners.
Okay.
Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up, so it can open up to be freed up, so you can show up for life. I love that. Beautiful.
It came in one fell swoop as I was writing the book, and
I believe
and
it.
it really is the heart and soul of what we're talking about. What's in the way is the way. The storyteller is usually a victim to life. I mean,
Mm.
even a long stoplight is happening to us. And the victim is this fuel for keeping caught in this struggling self. In fact, in the my book, The Gift of Our Compulsions, I said our core compulsion is to struggle.
Yes.
And
We're
when
addicted to it, aren't we?
we are. But again, to me, this struggling self isn't bad or wrong. It's the divine. It's
Mm.
coming in a form that the only thing that really works with it is consciousness, the ability to see it and to be with it. So it really is the divine waking up. And when you be us up, and when you really begin to when you wake up in the morning, and you may not be able to remember this throughout the day, but the more we develop the muscle of our curiosity, the more
Mm-hmm.
we can remember that today is an adventure and life will give me the exact set of experiences I need to see more clearly what is still bound up inside of me, what I still don't like, what I still want to get away from.
Mm.
And the more we just have moments throughout the day where we turn towards and say, I see you, to the fist in our solar plexus or the lump in our throat or the
Yes.
crick in our neck, that is where alchemy happens. Of course, to the struggling self, that's like a fart in the wind. This is
Yes.
not working,
Yeah.
but I call it the drops of water in the bucket syndrome.
Mm.
That here we have a bucket and we have maybe 2 moments on that day that we're going to work and we have this big presentation. But we maybe have 2 moments where we can see the scared one inside of us, or we can at least see the fist in our solar plexus.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we look and, the bucket isn't, the bottom isn't even covered. But as we keep on developing this ability
That
to
muscle. Yes.
that muscle, and then one day we look down, the bucket's half full, but oh my God, this is not enough, says the
Mm-hmm.
struggling self. But
Mm-hmm.
one day the bucket, your foot is wet and you look down and the bucket is flowing over.
Mm.
And so I've had 2 very close family members very ill in the last year and a half, and it has just the helplessness, the despair, the fear for the future. This has been really hard for my storyteller.
Mm.
But I like what Stephen Levine, my main mentor, said. We leave ourselves when we most need ourselves.
Mm.
And this has been so powerful because it has developed. I mean, I could go and win an Ironman triathlon now because, if it was a triathlon on
Yeah.
curiosity, you know, because because whenever these, and they come sometimes like tsunami waves,
Mm.
a wave of despair or helplessness or even hopelessness at times.
Yeah.
When somebody we love, when two people we love are really, truly, struggling, but that ability to notice, and I call this becoming a tightness detective,
Mm.
that whole storyteller tightens you. It tightens your
Yes.
body, it tightens your emotions, it
Your
tightens your
physical
mind.
body changes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I am a tightness detective. And when I notice, I don't stay, I get caught. I do get caught. I love both of these people with all of my heart.
Mm.
But when that tightness comes, then I immediately, it wakes me up.
Mm.
And it takes a while to get here. But that's okay. Stephen Levine was asked, how long does this take? And he said, it's the work of a lifetime.
Yes.
And the joy of coming back and actually being with, and it just brought tears, inside
Mm.
of me, to be with that helpless despair,
Yeah.
to actually have space around it, to
Yes.
actually say, I see you, and I
And
see
to give
how
it
hard,
love and to give
and
it
to give it love.
compassion, which is what
Yeah,
it needs, to give it the light that it
yeah,
needs. I mean,
absolutely.
looking at your struggle, I think is the key message here is that if you are struggling in your journey, then it is the divine that is awakening within you.
Yes, absolutely.
And when you get that realization, then you can start to look at that anxiety and that stress of the moments that it does appear, like drops in the bucket. I love that analogy
Right,
too, that you learn to practice that presence a little bit at a
right.
time,
Yeah,
and that muscle, just it's like any muscle, it just gets stronger and
right.
stronger, and you become much more sensitive and perceptive even sometimes before it comes. You can
Exactly.
start to
Yes.
see it starting to awaken, and you
Yeah.
can catch it before it actually becomes this full-fledged snowball rolling down the hill.
Perfect. Perfect. I don't know what I would have done in the last year and a half without this.
Yeah.
Sitting by the bed of somebody that really is in extreme pain, and you just love this person, and
Mm-hmm.
up comes the despair and the helplessness, and then I go towards. And people say, "Oh, but I want a quick fix." Well, has the quick fix ever really worked?
No.
I oftentimes talk about the tortoise and the hare. It's the
Yeah.
hare of our mind that runs around and tries to fix things. And my God, I'm going to go on a diet, or I
Yeah.
say I'll never drink again. And then we find ourselves drinking the next day, and slowly and surely it is the tortoise that plods
Yeah.
along. And what I add to what Stephen said, that is the work of a lifetime, I say, oh my God, we're hearing this message. This
Mm.
is the way out of the spell maker, of the storyteller.
Mm.
And it is the doorway back into a deep, abiding connection and trust with life.
Yes. Absolutely. It's okay to be okay with it in the sense of when someone is suffering in front of you and with
Right.
all your will you wish for them
Oh, you do?
to see the light, but you can't
No.
do it for them, you can't, and it just have to be in that place of just holding your
Yeah.
presence and saying,
Yeah.
you are going through your way right now, and I have
Right.
to respect that,
Right.
and I have to acknowledge that. This is your soul trying to figure it out.
Right.
And it may not happen in this lifetime, and it may
Yeah.
not happen for a number of lifetimes, but
And it may. We
and it
don't.
may.
We
Yeah,
don't
you
know.
don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
you only know that you can only be in that space yourself.
Yeah.
And that in being in that space yourself is the only way you can radiate
Beautiful.
that for
Beautiful.
them.
So true, to become it. And believe you me, I have tried to
Yeah.
help both of them see this. And what I do, what I get is a big pushback. And so I have learned, that whenever I am with both of them, I am, well, I do get caught. It's very painful, but
Yeah.
I then come back to this becoming what I know that their journey is taking them to. And the mantra that helps me a lot, John, is their soul knows what it is doing.
Mm, absolutely. And I have this discussion, Mary, with a lot of the guests on the podcast, and for the simple reason that it's such a foundational premise to knowing what your purpose is, to
Right,
getting in touch with your sole purpose in this lifetime.
right,
There has to be this connection to your own divinity.
right.
And you
Yeah,
don't really figure out your purpose. Not that you don't figure out, but it doesn't happen to you. It
right.
doesn't, because I believe that the purpose happens to you. We don't really find it. It comes through
Exactly.
us.
Yes. Yeah.
But to
And,
allow it
and
to come through you requires this strong, understanding and belief and experience in this foundational premise, doesn't
right. And it comes from beginning to know that what's in the way is the way, that
it? Yeah.
all the challenges of your life are not here because you've done something wrong, or it's a karmic retribution, or God has fallen asleep on the job, that
Mm,
these challenges are here for you. And the more you can have a moment here and a moment there, that you can ask yourself, what is life showing me here?
mm,
Or what is ready to be seen here? The more those clouds thin, and then you discover something that the storyteller does not know,
mm,
that each person has been given the gift of life because they carry something that nobody else ever has or ever will have, that each of us is a unique and perfect expression of the meadow,
mm,
of this intelligence, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to use the word God because they've created a lot of religions around it and we get caught in there.
yeah.
But there is this animating force that keeps the planet spinning as they do and heals the cuts on our skin and brought us from one cell that was so tiny you couldn't see it with the naked eye to 70 trillion cells,
Mm,
and they all work together without a thought from you.
yeah.
So it is slowly and surely. We don't need to try to get there. Like you said, we don't need to get to our purpose. We need to see and see with our heart this struggling self. And the more it thins,
Mm,
there's the meadow.
yeah. Yeah. You see home. You see. How
Home,
was that?
right?
How was that awakening with regards to your writing and what you're doing now? How did that sort of awaken within you? How did that purpose come through you?
Oh, oh, I laugh because people ask me to teach for 10 years before. I mean, I couldn't, I don't have anything to say. Oh, they'll ask me something that I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then life threw me into the middle of the ocean by a friend that was teaching a meditation class at a local college. He
Uh
said,
huh.
Barry, just come sit by me. You don't need to plan the class. Just speak whenever you want to. And and of course, it was a wonderful night,
Hmm.
and it was a 3 night class. And I went to pick him up the next night, and he was sick,
Hmm.
you know. And so here I go, and I let go.
Look at that. Wow.
And then somebody called me at 7:30 on a Sunday morning at a Unity church here in the local area and said, "I have laryngitis." This was the minister.
Uh huh.
You know, I'd never spoken in front of a group of people before, and
Yeah.
I said yes. And then I went and got in the shower and said, "Holy, but Jesus, what did I just do?" And again, I let go and I actually talked about the experience of being asked and what my mind did. And people talked about that talk for years.
Hmm.
Well, then it took me, now I know that I'm supposed to speak and teach. And then the same thing happened writing books,
Yeah.
that this was not something I ever planned. But now in writing books, I say, I'm a scribe, I'm not an author.
Hmm.
I just say, life, what do you want to say? And I sit down and I start writing without any, I just write and write and write and write and write and write and write. And then I go back the next day. and read it, and you can hear the music of it. You can hear, even if it's a paragraph I love, you're going along, da, 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 and you go, oh, no, I have to, okay, I can't save that paragraph, but, so this is a process
Yeah.
of letting go, of relaxing. Pema Chodron, the wonderful Buddhist nun,
I was just
her
thinking of the
definition
same
of,
person. That's crazy that you just said
yeah,
that.
I know, we're on the same link here. Her definition of enlightenment, relaxing into
Yeah.
life.
And I was watching a video of her yesterday, and she was talking about being in the comfort zone, and then she threw, another circle around it, which is the
Yes.
uncomfortable area where we
Yeah.
don't want to push ourselves, and that's exactly what you did. Was, someone
Yeah.
calls you, you're going to be talking to a few hundred people. What am I
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
do? I let go, but I go into that
Yes. Yes.
uncomfortable feeling because that's where growth
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, yeah, and the gifts are. I have a whole section in the book about befriending discomfort,
Yeah,
because we need to hear that, because the mind really says, I got to get the hell out of Dodge here,
yeah,
and we don't realize how much suffering we create by going away, and how much freedom happens when we go towards. But we need the skills of that.
yeah,
If you try to go towards despair when you don't have the skills, you'll just get swallowed up by despair or fear or loneliness or
right.
whatever it is. So there is a skill set
Yes.
that helps a lot in learning how to go towards.
Yeah. And part of that is experience, and part of that is just going in it a few times and really getting hurt by it, and letting that, awaken you to start
Right,
to read a book about it, or to listen to
right,
something, or to, it's our journey, it's our way.
right.
How can our listeners find you, Mary? Where can we find you online?
Uh, my website, so easy, maryomaley.com, and it's OMALLEY. And then there's also a website of What's in the Way is the Way, where you can see all the amazing endorsements that this book has received. And
Absolutely.
again, if people want the list of the spells, they can email Martha at maryomaley.com.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'll have all those links on our show page at drjohnfilo.com. Mary, this was a pleasure. This was an honor, and I really enjoyed this beautiful conversation.
Me too. Me too. And I just see it, like scattering out like ripples, all
Yes.
over the world, because we're ready. There's more and more of us that are ready to be curious about struggle rather than being identified with it.